later his colleagues, and family. They made him who he is today. On July the 31st, this summer, President Donald Trump awarded him the Medal of Honor. 48 years after he risked his life to save 10 of his men during a 2-day battle. I know this man whose story I've been telling you because I wear his clothes every day. I am that man. And if I can achieve what I've achieved, then you can achieve whatever your dreams are too. If you have hope, faith, and love, and always try to do your best, you will not fail. If you put others first and serve them, then they will love you 10 times more than you love them. This medal that I have around my neck right here, it's all about love. It's a love so deep in the souls of 89 men that it's really immeasurable. We fought for each other, 89 of us against over 2,000 enemy soldiers in a 48-hour battle for Nguyen Hill in Vietnam. We were dropped into this area, and they did not do what you're supposed to do before you drop a group of men like us in there. They did not do any forward observation. And the way they used to do that was they'd send people out there and do a little bit of research on how many soldiers were on that hill. On the first day, when my platoon went out towards that hill, I got close enough to the hill and it looked like lava coming off down that hill in the distance. That's how many people were on that hill. And I knew we were in trouble. I was wounded that first night by a rocket-propelled grenade. An explosion took place near me, and the shrapnel, the metal from that, went into my body from head to foot. I didn't pay much attention to that at that particular time. I had 2 men and I was trying to get to safety, and I did drag them into a trench line. Now remember, I told you this guy was 5'5", and at that particular time, this guy here weighed about 145 pounds. The 2 men that I dragged into that trench line were 225 pounds and 185 pounds, and I dragged both of them into that trench line at the same time. That night, we lost quite a few men. We lost 6 men that night. A bunch were wounded. I was able to save five men that night. And when we got ready to put them on a helicopter, the lieutenant, who was only at that particular time 20 years old, it was his second tour, he lied about his age to get into the military. And so the first tour, he was a 17-year-old lieutenant. And so I'm really standing here because of the skill that he had. You talk about a team, everybody has a job to do, and he was able to call in airstrikes and things like that against this humongous enemy group that we had in front of us. And he turned to me, he said, "Doc, get on." And it was at that time that I remembered the explosion, and I remembered the ping into my body with all of this metal that hit it. But I really didn't have time to think about it at that time as I was moving these guys off the top of this berm and into the trench line. And I looked down and there was blood all over me. And a lot of that blood was mine. And I looked at him and I said, "I'm not going." And he said, "Why not?" And I said, "You're going to need me." As I said, I saw the number of enemy soldiers coming down off that hill, and I'd rather be dead than to find out later that just one of my men wasn't able to be saved because their medic went in on a helicopter to be treated. I have one last story before I open it up for some questioning. And this is probably one of the most important lessons that I learned during the war. The second night, and I was wounded 2 more times the second night, once by AK-47 bullet, which struck me right here in the forearm, and I actually stitched this up myself. It's not a great job, it's not professional, but it stopped the bleeding at the time. I was working over a man who had a gunshot wound to his stomach. So the first thing I had to do, I couldn't move him. So I'm out in the middle of a rice paddy, and as I'm working over him, that's when the AK-47 came between us and grazed my arm here. And I got the bandages on him, and then I never get into anything in a gory way, so I'm going to explain this to you in a very easy way so you'll understand. When you have open wounds to any organs, you have to keep them wet. So I took my drinking water, which I had not had anything to drink or eat up to this point, and I never ate or drank anything for the 48 hours. And I took some of my water and I poured it on there. I would do that through the evening, the whole night long, until my water was gone. After I got that on there, I dragged him into a trench line. I'm trying to figure out, how am I going to carry this guy? I can't throw him over my shoulders, otherwise his insides will maybe fall out. So I determined that, well, what I'll do is scoop him up like a baby. And remember, I'm going to run through about a 25-yard area with bullets coming from the enemy and bullets coming from my own men. And all of a sudden, a thought came over me, out of nowhere. It had been since I was a little boy that I had told my father that I loved him. Men didn't say that to their sons. I didn't say it to my brothers. Boys didn't say it to boys. That's the way it was in the 50s. Now, I knew my father loved me, and I assumed that he knew that I loved him. But I had a conversation with my Maker in that trench line. And I said to him, if you can get me out of this hell on earth so that I can go back home, look my father in the face again, and tell him that I love him, I will be the best father, the best coach, and the best teacher that I can possibly be. All of a sudden, this unbelievable peace came over me. I knew now that it was not my will, but God's will, that I would either make it through that battle or I wouldn't. And so I carried on with my duties as a combat medic. I carried that man like a baby to safety. As I said, I went back to him several times. I went out front and fought, and I went back to him several times. I also had a man that I went out over 25 yards to get, and he had a gunshot wound to the shoulder, and I went back and gave him shots during the night to keep him from going into shock. By the way, that man was at my ceremony on July 31st. He is one of the top geoscientists in the nation. Kent Nielsen, out of the University of Texas. He still has an office there. He and his wife just moved into a $1.5 million home on Amelia Island down in Florida. And he could have died in that battle. This is not my reward, and I'm not trying to belittle this medal. It is the highest medal that anyone can achieve. in the military. Only 72 people who are living have this medal around their neck. My real reward is that 10 Americans and 1 Vietnamese soldier lived a complete full life. They have children, grandchildren, and as I've just said, this man became one of the top geoscientists in the nation. That's my reward. So obviously, God kept his side of the bargain. I'm standing before you, and I did make it out of that battle. And I did come home, and when I got off the plane in Chicago, you know, in World War II, they had big ticker tape ceremonies when the soldiers came home from World War II. Not only was there not a crowd there, they had sent my father to the wrong gate. There was no one there. So my first great realization was, oh well, I guess you're not going to get that ticker tape like your dad got. But I saw my dad, and I ran to him, and I hugged him, and I told him that I loved him. And he did the same, just like we'd been doing it for years. It was our greeting and our departure. As a matter of fact, on September 4th, 1991, when my father passed away, he had an aneurysm to the heart watching the news. And I wasn't there. But the night before, I said, "Good night, Dad. I'll see you tomorrow, and I love you." It's real important, those 3 words. And so many times, even in today's, and by the way, I taught my children that was okay, my grandchildren, my athletes, and even those guys I fought with. Joe Mittendorf is a machine gunner that covered me very well. And even when I get done talking to Joe on the phone, I'll say, "Okay, Joe, I'll try to call you again this week, and I love you." "Love you too, Doc." Nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all wrong with that. Because I know how much those guys love me. They put their life on the line for me, and I did the same thing for them. So I have an assignment for you. Yeah. There must be someone, are you ready? That's a teacher for you, isn't it? This is an easy assignment, though. There must be somebody whom you love, and maybe it's been a little while since you've seen them. Today, you have so many ways to do what I'm going to assign. Get in touch with them today. Today. Text them, tweet them, travel with them, meet them. That rhymed, didn't it? Call them on the phone. Go see them if you can see them. And tell them that you love them. Remember this and listen up. I almost waited too long with my dad. Not on purpose, but that's one of the bad habits, I guess, that we formed in the 1950s. That habit of not telling someone very important to you. Now, my dad was not only my dad, he was my best friend. He and I did a lot of things together as I went through life. He had to work as a child, so he didn't get to compete in athletics. When he was your age, in the 8th grade, he was the fastest male in the junior high and the high school. But he had to go to work after school and take the money home to his parents. He was 6 years old when the Depression hit. So by 12 years later, as a senior in high school, he's having to work. So he enjoyed watching his son excel and have fun. That's the key. One other thing I'm going to pass on to you before I open up for questions. How much time do I have? How am I doing? How much time do I have? About 10 minutes. I'll open up the questions. Okay? And you have a question? Oh, you got the questions? Oh, say, you guys did your homework. All right. Okay, go ahead, fire away.
make a lot of friends in the Army?
Oh, there. Did I make a lot of friends? You know, I've been asked, literally asked, hey, would you do this all over again? Would you go to war? And I said, nobody gets up in the morning and says, oh, I hope I get to go to war today. I just hope that we start fighting the North Koreans and I can get to go. No. But, listen up. That's a great question. If I had gone to Vietnam, I wouldn't have met some of the most caring, brave, loving individuals that I have met in my entire life. I have reconnected. We walked out of that battle with 32 men. I've reconnected 20 of us since I retired from teaching. And 10 of those guys were at my ceremony, and 5 of the 10 that were there were 5 of the 10 that I had saved in Vietnam. Okay, next.
How did this help build your character today?